Can anybody else on that grid right now do what Max is doing in a Super GT car in the Nurburgring? And I don't think so.
This is talkSPORT's motorsport show On Track. I'm John Jackson, and we have loads to talk about this week, with loads coming up this weekend. Formula E is back in Monaco with 2 races. Its second ever doubleheader, a race on Saturday afternoon and a race on Sunday afternoon. You'll hear that live on talkSPORT too. We've also got the small matter of Christian Horner now actually officially available to work again in Formula One. Where's he going to end up? Will he even return to the sport? And of course, the big news that the Nurburgring 24 Hours has sold out weekend tickets in record time. The first time ever it's sold out. And it might have something to do with a certain Max Verstappen driving there this weekend. I'm joined this week by Racing News 365's Nick Golding. And Nick, it's one of those weekends where there's something to look at wherever you go.
There is something going on pretty much everywhere. There's also Indy 500 qualifying over Indianapolis. So there is literally something globally going on wherever you look. And yeah, it's a big one for Formula E. And of course, a very big one for a certain Max Verstappen.
Yeah, let's start by talking about that, because the Nurburgring 24 Hours last year set attendance records, 280,000 spectators across that weekend. Obviously, I mean, it is what it says. It's a 24-hour race around the Nurburgring. But obviously, that's such an iconic track and such a long track that it really tests the skill of drivers. I see a lot of videos come up on social media of people paying the 35 quid or whatever it is to go and take their car around there, and obviously then doing 20 grand's worth of damage, and them saying, well, it's still worth it, which seems baffling to me. But it's one of those kind of perfect storms where you've got this amazing track, your 24-hour race, which people go crazy for, and then add into the mix Max Verstappen. And as I said there, you've sold out all weekend tickets ahead of the race for the first time ever. It really goes to show what star power Max Verstappen has, even though he's not known for his sports car driving.
I mean, Max is a generational talent. That's the easiest way of putting it. And he's somebody that everyone wants to watch. And there's been, some criticism of the fact that the series that runs the Nürburgring 24 Hours NLS has obviously moved some races, some dates around, so Max could take part in it. And actually, it's done them the world of good, because the viewing figures they've been getting, you've only got to look at their YouTube to see what they've been doing with Max in it compared to last year. And it's like night and day. It's extraordinary, the power and the pull Max has. And the craziest thing is, he's probably a favourite to win this weekend, which sounds crazy, the fact he's never done a 24-hour race. I don't think he's actually driven yet a GT car at night. Of course, that's going to happen this weekend for him. He's probably going to win. There's my bold prediction already. We're only 4 or 5 minutes in. And it would be arguably maybe his greatest achievement in motorsport so far, to go from having never really raced in GT racing before. Yes, he's done a couple of bits here and there at the Nürburgring, but it's all been to prepare for this weekend. Whether he then does even more afterwards, we'll have to wait and see, but it's going to be one I think that a lot of people are going to want to watch.
And he recently tested a Super GT car over in
Yeah.
Japan and was a couple of seconds quicker than their quickest driver, having driven, I think it was his second lap as well. And it was in the
Second
wet,
lap.
which is a fascinating story. He really is proving, if anyone ever doubted it, that he is that generational talent. You know, he's a 4-time F1 world champion. He's had an astounding junior career, and now he's going on to show. And if he wins this weekend, as you say, that will just show that Max Verstappen is undoubtedly the best driver around, right?
I mean, it's Max Verstappen, isn't it? All these things he does, beating a Super GT driver by 2 seconds on his second lap. For most, that would be like, wow, that's just Max Verstappen. I think we come to expect it. Why wasn't it 3 seconds, 4 seconds? But Max is just, he's a very rare type of breed in terms of, and I go back to a conversation I had with Johnny Herbert a little while ago, and he pointed out that if Max were to leave, there's always that next big thing to come along. And let's not forget, Max has taken the sport forwards from when Lewis Hamilton was at his peak. Max has taken on, the throne sort of things. Yes, I know we didn't win the title last year, but he still is the best driver right now on that Formula One grid. Can anybody else on that grid right now do what Max is doing in a Super GT car in the Nurburgring? And I don't think so. And what's amazing is Max is inspiring his fellow competitors. Kimi Antonelli said that he wants to get his Nürburgring pass by the end of the year. The permit needs to get to be able to drive around there in GT cars. So, there's people looking up to Max in the F1 paddock, wanting to see what he is, because he's just showing that F1 drivers don't need to stick just to F1. It's kind of going back to how things used to be maybe 30, 40 years ago, when you'd have drivers competing in Formula One, Formula Two, GT racing, all in the same 12-month period. It's not really a thing anymore. You see, occasionally they might be allowed to go and do Le Mans or something, but as a one off. But, Red Bull obviously have so much trust in Max and vice versa that they let him go do all these things. And Max quite clearly loves it. And I think it's going to be the thing that, keeps Max in F1 longer than just this year. And I go back to, if he wins this weekend, does he then go back next year to defend his title, victory? I don't know what you call it, but he is just one of a kind.
Yeah, I think even Lando has also suggested that he might fancy a go. Not in so many
Yeah.
words, but he said, followed up and suggested that he might fancy it as well. And it really goes to show the impact and the influence that Max Verstappen has. I was trying to think of, if Lando was to turn up at British touring cars, would that sell out? And I think it probably would, because I think people would love the opportunity to watch Lando drive at Brands Hatch again after so many years. But, on that scale of an F1 driver turning up at a race and making it sell out straight away, I'm sure if Lewis Hamilton, I guess, did the same, maybe it would have happened. But yeah, the power, the draw of Max Verstappen is absolutely ridiculous. And as you say, maybe it will help him keep in Formula One a bit longer if he can go off and do these side quests. And I'm sure he'll drive at Le Mans. I'm sure he'll drive all kinds of cars in his career. It does sound like he's someone who wants to tick off many, many things. We also need to talk this week about the news, and well, it's not news, but it's just the situation with Christian Horner, because he obviously left Red Bull Racing. He had a no compete clause in his contract, and I saw on Racing News 365 yesterday that has now expired. It expired last, I think, Friday, which means he's now available to work in Formula One. So why have we not seen a team announcing him? Why has he not been announced this morning? Why was he not announced the first moment he possibly could be? Because he is a man that has brought so much success to Formula One. Surely teams are itching to snap him up, Nick.
But will he be going to Formula One? That's the big question. Yeah, so it looks like Horner's basically his gardening leave, 10 months, is now up. So he's allowed to, let's say, work again effectively. But I guess the big question is, will it be in Formula One or could it be in MotoGP? Because he's obviously been spotted there recently at their Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez only a couple of weeks ago. And he was speaking to TNT Sports there. And there's been some rumors, could he become the new CEO of that championship? Of course, that's now taken over and owned by Liberty Media as well, the same people that own Formula One. So there's a massive link there now. He's obviously being linked in F1 to Ferrari, to an investor claim a stake in Alpine. We've speculated that he could be good for Audi on this show a few weeks ago as well. So I think it's about, even the FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, has said that, he's amazing for the sport. We need him to come back. And Horner, whether you love him or hate him, he's a character and he's somebody who brings with him a very unique personality, which is firstly perfect for Drive to Survive. I don't think we've seen a rivalry like Toto Wolff's and Horner's, since Horner left. I don't think Zach Brown Toto or Zach Brown Laura Mekies really has the same kind of vibe or feeling to it. Like the Toto Christian Horner thing was kind of unique and one of its own. I think it's a matter of time. And I do feel as well that Christian is going to be very much aware how much his services are wanted. And it's going to wait for the right opportunity where I don't think he'll want to go back to Formula One in a team in the bottom half. I think he'll want to be somewhere where he believes he can win and do a load of good like he did for Red Bull. Or could he go to MotoGP and effectively be in charge of a championship? I mean, for viewing figures, I think that'd probably be quite a good thing for MotoGP. I think that'd be quite interesting to see what Christian Horner can do, let alone in charge of a team, but of a championship. So for me, I think only time will tell. Got it in already. But he's going to come back. It's just a matter of where and when.
Got to get that catchphrase in. I
Got to
think
get it
for
in.
Christian Horner, he's waited a year, so what's a bit longer to wait for the correct
Exactly.
opportunity? And there was talk of, they're always comparing him with Toto Wolff, aren't they? And they were saying that Toto invested in Mercedes, and look what his 33.3% share of Mercedes is worth these days, whereas Christian was obviously just paid by Red Bull, therefore has earned nowhere near the amount of money. Obviously, Toto's money is not technically earned, it's tied up in that team, but should he sell his stake, then obviously he's going to be a very, very rich man if he's not already, which he is. But I'm sure if someone threw a load of money at Christian Horner and he didn't have any ownership of the team, I'm sure he'd still consider it because, as you say, his stock is very high and he's in demand. We need to also finally talk about the changes to the regulations already for next year. It feels like they've backed down already, with people complaining about the 50-50 split between combustion engine and electrical battery motor in the Formula One cars.
It's just mental, isn't it? That we're only, 3, 4 races in now, and we're already talking about these major changes for next year. It looks like, yes, they're going to go to, it's currently, it's, let's say called 50-50. It's not quite, it's more like 51-49 in favor of internal combustion, but it's looking like, yes, from next year, we're going to go to 60-40, 60% internal combustion, 40% electrification, which funnily enough is actually something Christian Horner called for before he was obviously fired by Red Bull, saying that these 50-50 won't work. It should be 60-40. Long behold, here we are now looking like we're going to be going to 60-40. It looks like as well we're going to see more changes even this year from the Canadian Grand Prix, where again that 50-50 is going to be adjusted ever so slightly more in favor of internal combustion. So this will go down already, I think, as possibly the worst regulations in the history of Formula One. The fact we are 4 races in and already they're changing it so dramatically from next year, it's going to effectively be it's entirely new regulation set as it is from 50-50 to 60-40. That's a major change. You know, so we'll talk about Formula E a bit later on, but Formula E must be looking across and thinking, what are you doing? You know, you're making such a mess of this. And it is because the drivers have said from day dot, they don't like it. They've obviously been listened to. The teams, the stakeholders have been listened to. The fans have been listened to because they seem to hate it. And yeah, here we are now with still, what, 17, 18 races to go. And we know that in 17, 18 races time, these cars are once again going to change quite a bit.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it looks bad. The perception of it isn't fantastic at all. And of course, the FIA president has suggested by 2031 or maybe even 2030 they'll be with V8s again. And I guess the synthetic fuel. It's quite weird for me that the synthetic fuel situation that has changed this year barely gets mentioned. Like, that's quite a big step forward in Formula One. I know that the F2 and F3 teams have been running that fuel for a little while as a bit of a test, but yeah, no one's talking about the synthetic fuels, which I think is a huge step forward. So I'm sure there's a lot of money in synthetic fuels, especially with what's going on in the world at the moment. If you can create your own fuel in your laboratory or whatever it is, probably massive factory, then you are onto a winner and you've become a very rich man. Maybe Christian Horner will get into synthetic fuels and we'll never see him in Formula One again.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible business to get into. We have Formula One. We've got to wait another weekend for Formula One when we go to Canada. There is sort of talk of maybe them getting one of the 2 races that were cancelled back on the grid later on this year. Do you think it's, whether it happens or not, obviously no one really knows for sure. Do you think it's necessary that we do that? Maybe financially, I guess it is.
I think financially, it obviously makes complete sense because obviously F1 would quite like the money. But I think from a human point of view, it is going to be brutal. I do think they get one of the 2, and it looks like the 2 weekends they're kind of looking at is the 2nd to 4th of October, which, you know, fun fact, my birthday weekend, which I've actually booked off. Looks like I'm going to have to cancel that. It looks like they're looking at that possibly being maybe the Bahrain Grand Prix, or if Bahrain and Saudi can't host a race, they'll get somewhere else to come in as a standalone for just to fill in, basically to make a new triple header with Azerbaijan and Singapore. So who knows, maybe a Turkey or something. They'd probably be quite quick to come in. The other thing they're looking at is maybe making the end of season a quadruple header, something we've never seen before. It's effectively F1 trying to make sure this calendar does not dip below 22 races, because the issue they've got is, depending on how long this crisis and these, you know, these horrible scenes in the Middle East goes on for, does this mean we'll be able to even race in Qatar and Abu Dhabi? Because if we can't do that, we could see this year drop into 20 races. And obviously, come November, December, if they need places to fill in for either of those 2 venues, Europe is immediately impossible, because I don't think anybody wants to be at Silverstone in 2 degrees and heavy rain or snow. So the big issue for F1 is trying to think of where can they go if the Middle East crisis continues, and if it doesn't continue, where can they fit these races in? So they're looking at around the start of October and possibly as well middle of December.
Yeah, so if you're a Formula One fan, maybe don't make too many plans around that time, especially if you're a journalist for Racing News 365. Unfortunately, you are not allowed a holiday. We will bring you that news, obviously, as soon as we get it, and you can check out more F1 stuff, both at talksport.com and racingnews365.com.